What's going on, guys? T2RX6 here, back for another third-party review, and today we're taking a look at the KFC E.V.A.I. I assume it's supposed to be heavy metal transistor. If you haven't guessed, it's blaster. Yeah, masterpiece-sized blaster. Before we get on the blaster, let's actually talk about some of his accessories. Of course, he comes with a case here, dark blue for Hifi, which is rewind, I believe. You also get another head for rewind here with the little camera from the comic books. Really tiny ball joint though, so I don't know if I'll necessarily be changing that in and out on mine. Another head, I think the head crest might be a little different. I'm not really entirely sure. This blue piece here, which I had no idea what it was, thanks to my buddy Skullface. It is optional light piping for the main head. I'm not going to put that in. I like the painted eyes personally. You do get an alternate head here. This is like a more toy accurate style. You can see really nice paint work. I do have a little mess up on the eye there, but you know, what can you do? Not a big deal. You of course get two guns here for rewind. I don't know if you're supposed to get two of these, but I did. There seems to only be one spot in the packaging for it, or I just haven't noticed the second one. One of them was just loose in the package when I opened it up. But yeah, I got two of these. I can't remember from watching other reviews if other people did or not. They do fold down at the stock here, which leads me to believe that they can store on here, but we'll get to that after. And then finally, from that like one episode of G1, some speakers that you can use. So overall, there's really not a whole bunch to say about his cassette player mode. It is a boombox by all rights. It looks really good. On the side you got, you know, fake jacks and switches and, you know, knobs on this side. The back is a little more sloppy, where you start seeing all these open holes and stuff. And the bottom is just completely obvious that it's a robot. But, you know, really I can't hold that against it. It really does, from the only angle that you're probably going to display it. Looks pretty awesome. That said, there's things I would improve. So they did this metallic red color because obviously this guy is meant to be like a counterpiece to Soundwave here, who has, you know, a little bit of metallic blue decos on him. There's kind of like a metallic flake to his plastic here. So they went with the metallic. Unfortunately, they left some spots of it just plain red plastic, which doesn't make much sense because it may not look it on the camera, but there's a pretty big visual difference between this and this, which is really weird because this red plastic here actually has the same like flake effect as Soundwave, where it's kind of a built-in flakiness. I don't know why they just didn't cast it all in that color and skip the paint, because yes, all this is paint, and that's another double-edged sword, because at your hinges, things scrape a little, and paint, you can most definitely see, is flaked off of mine. And to make the metallic red, it's a clear red coat on top of a silver. So I can fix it, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to do that, and from my understanding, a solid red version of this guy is coming, and I kind of wish that's what this was. Down here, you get the same type of gimmick as the Masterpiece Soundwave, except instead of the eject button up here, it's down here. Unfortunately, it doesn't work as good as Soundwave. From what I see, the tapes always seem to get caught in here, so they never really pop out right. Now this also does have the capacity to hold 3 tapes, just like Soundwave, and you push this yellow trigger, and mine's gotten a little bit easier over time, but it's really pretty difficult to push this down far enough to actually make this actuate. So I'm better off just leaving it without, because unlike Soundwave, his thing is so dark, I bet you didn't even realize that rewind was in there this whole time. So let's talk about rewind real quick. We've got eject G1 here, here's rewind. Again, actually the G1 tape is a little bit bigger, but I think that's because of the way things work on him. But yeah, standard size tape here, no problems. You know, really looks the part from the back. It even looks like it's transformed almost entirely the same way, which I gotta give them credit for. Now, I talked about these guns being able to fold up, and you have these huge hollow cavities in this peg here. You actually can take this gun and fit it in here, and if you pull the panel out a little and kind of wiggle it around a bit, you actually can get this thing on here when it's in its boombox mode. So you can actually store the gun there if that's something that's important to you. For me, it's not really, and yeah, I can just put the gun elsewhere or in a box when it's in boombox mode. But that is a possibility, and I have seen there's kind of ways that you can sort of make these things fit somehow on the back. I saw Skullface do it. Again, I don't really care because these will just stay in the box too. And finally, before we go to his robot mode, here is our G1 version. You can just see really the red and the silver just really improves the whole look of the player. But nevertheless, it's most definitely Blaster. Alright, so let's take a look at their robot modes. We'll start with Hifi here. You can see I've given him his guns. They are very loosely held into his hands here that they just seem to fall out all the time. So be careful with that. Articulation on this guy, head, you saw it. If you watch the transformation video, it swivels there. I suppose you have up and a little bit of movement because of the transformation joint, but nothing really, you know, intended. Shoulders here, again, because of transformation, you can get a little on the black, but really it's the ball jointed arm here with the swivel at the elbow and the swivel at the actual wrist joint. Down to the waist, nothing. Of course, down here we've got a swivel here, actually a ball joint up there, I'm sorry, so you can actually rotate it, and then the rotation here, and then mid-thigh, and then actually on the knee, so plenty of leg motion out of this guy, which is really nice. Coming down to the leg, whoops, if I can keep him in my hand, you can see big old ball joint there for plenty of ankle articulation there. So overall, really good. Before we go on to Blaster, let's bring out the Masterpiece Rumble, or Frenzy, or Frumble, or whatever you want to call him. And honestly, I can say, this feels like the nicer figure, actually. He's beefier than this one. This feels a lot more hollow and lightweight. Really, props on this. This is a good job. Really good job. And for a final comparison here, before we move on, here is our rewind, eject, rewind G1 version. So you can see, you know, captured everything really nice. Good job, KFC. Why aren't all your tapes like this? Why is my Slam Dance that I have downstairs just a pile of garbage, and this is so good? I don't get it. Makes no sense. Moving on to the main attraction here, we've got the actual Blaster, and oh my goodness, from head to toe, he looks like Blaster, even incorporating like the little G1 things that appear here when you fold his feet down. Just a gorgeous figure all the way around. There's pretty much no bad angle. Everything is filled in. He looks like a solid robot. So any complaints about hollowness and anything like that just kind of dissipate here when it comes to this particular version. It turned out so good, more than I could ever imagine. Now he is not a parts former, a panel former, and he's got all kinds of panels that flip and fold and everything you can imagine, and that may turn some people off. He's also got this weird joint here that when he comes down from his arm, it goes into this like double swivel here, which it looks fine when it's actually up, but if you're trying to hold his arm straight flat down, it does end up looking a bit weird for me. So mine always kind of keeps his elbows a little bit bent, but I'm okay with that. Just to show you these accessories here, before we go on with articulation, they're kind of a pain to get to use, because since everything is a flap on top of 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 a flap, to open the flap, to turn this around, and then close every single flap back up. It feels like, I mean, granted it only takes a couple seconds, but it's kind of a process to get these so you can just stick them on there. That said, it is a very MP touch when you can add a certain little accessory that was used in one episode or two to the toy. So as much as I give it flack for all the panels I have to move to make it happen, I do really like that. So let's talk articulation on this guy. We'll start at his head up here. Let's just raise this a tiny bit. His little ear things are actually articulated, so you can kind of put them however you want. Maybe you want a sad blaster, or you just want them all the way up. I just tend to leave them a little bit like that. I think that looks nice to me. The head is a major disappointment here, though. You can see he's got like that Masterpiece style swivel system down here, but like, look at this. Like, something's wrong here. We're gonna have to actually investigate that after, because this head is not sitting on that like pyramid thing right. It doesn't have any up and down. It's just kind of sitting there. I don't really understand what's happening. So that's a problem. But everything else is good. 360 at the shoulder, the nice in and out joint, the bicep cut, that joint I had talked about previously, the wrist swivel, which can rotate a little due to transformation here. Fully articulated fingers. Some people really like that. I really don't. As a bonus, you actually got a set for Masterpiece Soundwave too if you really wanted them. I kind of wish they just gave me the option of not having fully articulated fingers instead, but that's just me. Coming down here, waist, excellent. Blocked a little by this flap, but of course there's nothing stopping us from moving it out of the way. Down here, we got nice, thick, ratcheted thighs, forward and back. The forward and back is much softer, but still acceptable, though it is held up a little by the crotch plate here. Coming down here, we do have the thigh swivel and the knee, and then you saw the whole foot joint is on a rotation, a swivel. Really nice. A lot of range of motion that can be had from this guy. Really no complaints where articulation is involved, except for whatever is going on with the head. So I took his head apart, and it turns out that it had popped off this little swivel piece here, which is obviously the mechanism involved for actually changing his head out. Not terribly easy to do, so we're not going to even bother, but there you go. You would take it out and kind of force the other head on top. Could have been executed better, that's for sure. And yeah, it basically leaves you, if you have this problem, you got to get in there with, like, you know, something small. For instance, this screwdriver without the heads on it, and then push it back in. Now his head is going to actually work just fine again. And you can see, here's the solid blue light piping. If you wanted to go ahead and switch it out, now would be the time, and you just kind of slot it in there, and now he's got light piped eyes. But I like the solid blues because I don't have a head behind, or a light behind the heads of my robots. So yeah, particularly nice. And then slide this back on. I gotta say, I do kind of wish that the face here was a different color from the top visor. I might paint that myself later. And I gotta say, Blaster's kind of got a creepy face going on there. So let's get some size comparisons of Blaster. Let's start with the G1, and just for comparison, you can see, like I was talking about, the foot details here that are exposed with the transformation. Nice feature. Really like this. You know, always realized this guy was big, but until you break him out again, you kind of always forget that he is Masterpiece sized. It's pretty crazy. And then here is Soundwave, and those are the only two masterpieces I'm going to show him off with. And Blaster sits just a tiny bit taller than Soundwave. Nothing that I could see complaining about, so perfect. So this is T2RX6. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you get a chance, check out the KFC Blaster. My understanding is KFC is the same company as X-Transbot, so fingers crossed on that Megatron. See you next time.